Hello. So I'm currently sat in bed, well laid in bed, and I have been since I got in pretty much. And yeah, I've been doing my exam today. It's a 15-hour exam, and today I've done like 6 hours or something like that. Yeah, pretty much 6 hours. In like 2 3 hour intervals, and I was okay for. Well, I'll talk through it. I'll talk through what went on. So the first hour, my thoughts were going like crazy. Like I found it extremely difficult to settle into it, but because it wasn't a written exam, it didn't necessarily matter that my thoughts were on overload because I could just it's drawing essentially, and it wasn't observation, so it didn't require a great degree of concentration on the outside world. Like obviously I had to concentrate, but when I'm drawing, so I can allow for a little bit of leeway for my thoughts to intrude because I don't know. I've practiced a lot at it, so it's not necessarily a conscious activity. It's just something that happens. So it wasn't too much of a big problem. But yeah, I actually went like a lot of different places in my mind that it was sort of weird. Like I don't think I've sat and or been forced to sit for that amount of time before and just draw without like forcefully. Like usually when I'm at home I'll put some music on in the background, or I'll listen to a lecture, or I'll listen to, I don't know, maybe some biblical verses, just to have something on in the background. But we weren't allowed music, we weren't allowed headphones, we weren't allowed anything. It was just silence, and then all the noises from other people working in the room. And at first I found it quite distracting, but people were using projectors, and it was producing this like when it was turned on, it had like a bulb on, and it was producing like a fan sound, like a constant buzz, and I liked it. It was like it was sort of like a binaural beat, and it just drowned everything out. Um, but after about 20 minutes, everyone had finished with the projector, so it went off, and I was like, oh okay. So that's when my thoughts started intruding a little bit more again, and it was my mind was so busy. Like I thought about so many different things, and I became conscious of my thinking, and I knew that I was thinking a lot, and I kept changing the things I was thinking about. I was like trying to guide my mind because I found myself thinking about things like, oh, this is pointless. I'm wasting so much time, and I was like, wait, if I think I'm wasting time, then why don't I think about something productive whilst I'm doing something productive? Yeah, so I started thinking, well, I can revise my other topics in my head. So I was like, okay. Well, I was reading my book yesterday, God, a Guide for the Perplexed by Keith Ward. I started thinking about some of the ideas from that, like Augustine and Plato. Plato believed that God or the demiurge made the universe from pre-existing matter, and that the realm, and he did this based on the forms which exist outside of God. So the realm of the forms is essentially a separate place, distinctive from God, and God used his knowledge from the world of the forms in order to create material copies of the forms, and that's how the world is the way it is, and that's an overtly Platonic view. And then Augustine came along and he was like, no, wait a minute. The forms don't exist in a separate place to God. The forms exist in God's mind, and that's how he created the universe. So God didn't require any sort of. God wasn't contingent on any other external source of knowledge in order to be able to create the universe. So the forms exist within his head. And he also created the matter because, I think this is called the doctrine of ex nihilo, and it means from nothing. So God created the universe from nothing, from himself, essentially. Yeah, he didn't require any pre-existing matter in order for the universe to come into being. He just and created it. So that's what I was thinking. I was trying to sort out my thoughts and the things I was reading last night because I was engaged in that book. And yeah, so I was doing that while I was drawing, and then I went on to other things. I was like, okay, well, yeah, that's pretty interesting. And then I was like, okay, natural law, what can you remember about that? So I was trying to revise natural law in my head. And I was thinking about Aquinas and the synderesis, and it's like, okay, well, what are the key points here? And then you've got was it the scholastics? And was it the scholastics? I think that's what they were called. Aristotle, reason, synderesis, which is like the vault. It's locked in a vault in your mind, and you have to unlock it with reason and the virtue of prudence. And And the synderesis rule is do good, avoid evil. So, and that's how you start to unlock the synderesis, which is essentially the knowledge of the good. So it's like we all have the knowledge of the good within us. We just have to sort of unlock it through experience, through trial and error, and through our reasoning faculties, and then eventually we should be able to become a pretty good person if we keep doing that. So that's sort of natural law. Obviously there's a lot more to it than that, and that's what I was trying to think through in my head. Yeah, so I was thinking about all these different things in my head, and then like eventually I got to about an hour and a half mark or something like that. So halfway through the first half of the lesson of the exam period, and I finally got into my focus state where it was just me and the paper, and it's like I had occasional thoughts, but my mind was mostly still. It was like a pool of water. So getting into the project, which seems to be the same as when I try and get into anything, my mind is crazy. It's bouncing around everywhere, and that's extremely problematic when I'm doing written exams, because I can't have my mind bouncing everywhere. I can't have thoughts coming in, because there's a big difference for me with writing and drawing, and I think this is the same with everyone. When you're drawing, you're putting lines on the paper. You're trying to say something, but it doesn't necessarily have to be completely coherent. Whereas when you're writing something, you've got to be able to formulate sentences. But when you've got other sentences being formulated in your head, whether that be a product of the way you're feeling or any number of things, that's going to distract you from what you're actually needing to write. And then that makes me anyway, that makes me more, well, it makes me lose my thought train, and it makes me not be able to carry on, and then that distracts me even further, because it's like, oh, and then other intrusive thoughts coming, like I'm gonna fail. So yeah, and that's a problem for written exams, and I think, yeah, that's going to pose a problem for when I'm doing my actual A-levels, because there's quite a big weight on my shoulders for doing that. Like, I'm gonna go in there, and I don't know, I think the pressure is either gonna work in my favour or it's gonna pull me down, but I'm gonna do my best, and that's all I can really do, to be honest. But yeah, so I was okay for the first 3 hours, I would say. Like, I got enough done. Like, I'm working in a style which is, it's intricate, so it's like, it's difficult to actually get a lot down. It like I've done what I would say is maybe an A3 size piece so far over a 6 hour period, but it's probably not even completely an A3 piece. It's probably a bit smaller than that, actually. But it's taken a long time, and it doesn't look like there's a lot there, but it's just extremely detailed and intricate. But tomorrow, I think, instead of just using fine liner, I'm going to do a little bit of work with paint, so I can actually, because with paint, I'm not as good with it, so that's a little bit daunting to actually add paint to this thing. But I'm gonna try and do it anyway, because I can fill up the space quicker, and I know that I can paint. It's just I'm not as good with it, and I did do some good ones actually in my book. So if I can I'm gonna take my book in tomorrow, because I didn't do that today because I don't know, I just couldn't bother carrying it, and I thought I was just gonna work from my head. But I'm gonna take my book in tomorrow, and then I've got reference paintings which I can basically use as an influence or use to copy off almost, and yeah, and so that should be okay. And that'll help me fill up some space on the paper, so it doesn't look like I've just done a tiny little thing from my final piece across a 15-hour period, because that probably won't be super great, but you know, I think if it's detailed, then that'll definitely equate to something. Yeah, so going into the second 3 hours. Now, I don't know. I'd gone to have my dinner, and I was really, I'm gonna use the word discombobulated, but I don't know if that's a word. I found out how disorganized my head was at this point. I thought it was Monday because I was off college yesterday because it was bank holiday, and yesterday felt like a Sunday to me, so I was going through the whole day thinking it was Monday, but I knew it was Tuesday because I knew my art exam started on Tuesday. So I went and got my dinner, And then I was like, okay, well, it's Monday. My friends are normally in the philosophy classroom at this time, in a philosophy lesson at this time. But then I walked past my philosophy teacher's office and she was in there, and I was like, oh, is the lesson being cancelled? So I thought it must have been. So then I went upstairs. I went to the philosophy classroom, and I was expecting to see my friend Lisa and Jess there, but they weren't there. And then there was this other girl in there called Ellie. So I was like, have you seen Lisa? And she was like, no. Why? And I was just so lost. And then she was saying, oh, we've got tutor at 12:30, which I think she meant 1:30. And I was like, don't normally have, that's normally at 11:15 on a Monday. I didn't say that, I just walked away. And then as I walked out, I saw people in the sociology classroom, so I thought, oh, maybe they're doing the revision dinner class. And then, but that was the point when I was supposed to be in sociology, but I had to leave, but I had to not be in there because I was doing my art exam. So, and I didn't figure out that until later when I remembered it was Tuesday again. And yeah, it was so confusing. I don't know. And then, so after, like, I was feeling a little bit lost, a little bit not on this planet. And I'd gone back up to art about 45 minutes after we broke up for dinner. And yeah, I don't know. I started not feeling very well. Because it is that time of the month, and I started getting really bad period pains, and so I took some painkillers, and I just felt like I was going to be sick because they didn't kick in for ages. So I ended up going out like twice, and then I just eventually went and sat at the bottom of this staircase thingy, and then one of the teachers found me and they asked if I was alright, and I was like, no, not really, can I go work on the floor in the gallery bit? So they let me go and work in there by myself all afternoon, which is probably what I should be doing anyway, because when I do exams, I'm allowed to have a room for myself, and I don't see why it should be any different with art. So yeah, I found that a lot more helpful. So I think some of it was stress and some of it was just period pains, but I just wasn't feeling very good in the classroom, and it was also a little bit of a social thing, I think, and that I couldn't get my head around what was happening, what day it was, because I just somehow figured that out, and it was just a little bit disorientating. And yeah, so I went and worked on the floor in the gallery bit, and I quite enjoyed it in there because I was by myself. There's the whole front of it is just a massive window, and there was like a nice breeze coming through, so it's quite cool. And it was like well lit, and there's art all over the walls, and it was just really, like, I liked working in there. But my back was hurting a little bit because I was sat on the floor with this massive A1 board with a piece of paper stuck to it. But yeah, so I worked in there all afternoon, and I liked it. And I've just got to do it all over again tomorrow. But I asked my teacher if I'd be able to just work in the gallery all day instead of going into the classroom, because I don't know, I prefer to work by myself. So yeah, I think I've just talked for like 30 minutes non-stop, but that's alright. I went through a stage of thinking that maybe I've got like Asperger's or something, but like I've just been reading about it today actually, and I read about it like maybe a month ago. There's actually a big overlap between Asperger's and ADHD, and I think it's probably ADHD for me, because like I know that people with Asperger's or people on autism spectrum, they generally that have strict routines. Like, I require a routine in order to maintain organisation, which is probably why I went to a weird headspace today when I realised that it wasn't even the day I thought it was, and everything wasn't going to plan. So I do require a routine, but I struggle to establish one. So I'm like easily distracted, and don't know, I struggle to get tasks started, and I know that's another trait. But one of the things I sort of worry about is pinning a label on it, but I'm not so worried about that. Yeah, right, I'm not so worried about that, because like, if I get a job and, like, I've got these certain traits which are associated with, let's say, ADHD, like struggling to start tasks and struggling to switch between activities, and struggling when I haven't got some sort of set routine or knowing exactly what I'm doing, or struggling to maintain organisation, then I'm probably just going to appear like I'm lazy or something like that. But I think it's deeper than that, because I don't want to say I'm a lazy person. I like getting things done, I like being productive, but I just don't always know how to do that. I don't always know how to get myself organised, and I do find myself getting extremely distracted, and I find it extremely difficult to actually settle into doing tasks, and I feel like that's always been the case. Like, I've struggled with that throughout school, and also in school I struggle with, like, behaviour difficulties to quite an extreme extent, and that could be down to other factors, but, like, I don't think I should be so quick to rule it out. I was actually adamant at school that I did have ADHD, but, you know, I never got tested. Yeah. I don't know. Okay, so I've got my exam tomorrow, which I'm gonna finish. Probably not, actually. I've got 9 hours left. I've got 6 hours tomorrow and then 3 hours the day after. So, yeah, should be alright. I'm gonna try and do some more of my sketchbook now, because that needs finishing. And then that's it. I was just watching a Jordan Peterson video that I haven't actually watched yet. I was 3 seconds in when I got distracted. Jordan Peterson challenges Richard Dawkins, Sam Harrison determinism. So it's basically him talking with Ben Shapiro about Richard Dawkins, and I'm waiting for Richard Dawkins and Jordan Peterson to do some sort of collaboration or do some sort of debate with one another face to face or on Skype. And I don't think it's ever going to happen, and I think I've got some ideas why. It's like Jordan Peterson, he's got his religious theistic views on things, but with an interesting psychological twist, whereas Dawkins, he's a hard materialist, atheist, evolutionary biologist, and it's like, well, Jordan Peterson is sort of scientific, sort of reasonable, or seems to be, whereas Dawkins, he's the complete opposite end of the spectrum, and they both have rational cases to make, but I'm not sure that, I think they're both going to dig their heels in the ground, and it's got, I don't know, I'd like to see them have a discussion, though. I think that would be extremely interesting, and because I know that Jordan Peterson has called out Dawkins on a lot of things, like saying that he's got it wrong about atheism and about religion, but I can see what Dawkins is criticising when it comes to religion, because he's criticising the fundamental aspects of it, what I should say, Christian fundamentalism, or any sort of fundamental religious belief which takes a literalist interpretation of the scripture. I find it quite interesting, because it seems to be the case that Dawkins himself and other atheists alike also take literal interpretations of biblical scripture and interpret it as if it was intended to be some sort of scientific textbook, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It's definitely not the case, because to say that the Lord is my shepherd, or the Lord is a rock, or God is like a king, it's not saying that he is these things. It's clearly symbolic or metaphorical for some, I don't know, or representative of something else other than the Lord actually being a rock. Like, what does a rock symbolise? It symbolises something which holds you down, keeps you grounded, so that's what it's symbolic of. And if that's the case, then when we talk about God, are we really just talking about a man in the sky who created the universe, or are we talking about something symbolic and deeper than that? I don't know, but I think Dawkins is wrong. I like Ben Shapiro. I don't agree with everything he says, like on abortion. Like, I don't know if he's right about that. He's extremely against abortion in every sense of the word, but obviously that's influenced by his Jewish roots. Like, I can understand why he's against certain things, because he's religious, and, you know, that's okay. I respect that he can have an opinion, and he's extremely intelligent. Same with Jordan Peterson. They're both extremely intelligent, and I like listening to them both, which is why I'm listening to lectures about, which is why I'm listening to talks about them. Ooh. Richard Dawkins on veganism. I'm gonna watch that after, and then after I've watched that, then I'm gonna do my sketchbook, which I reckon actually do my sketchbook while, because it's just talking, isn't it? Really? Okay, I'm gonna go because I'm talking a lot for 20 minutes. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.